For centuries, the British monarchy has stood as a symbol of stability, tradition, and unwavering duty. It's an institution built on a carefully constructed image of perfection. But behind the palace walls, beneath the dazzling crown jewels, lie secrets. Scandals so profound, the royal family went to extraordinary lengths to bury them, hoping they'd be erased from history forever. Today, we're pulling back the velvet curtain to reveal 3 of the monarchy's greatest cover-ups. These are the stories they never wanted you to know. Our first story begins not with a fairy tale romance, but with a constitutional crisis that threatened to shatter the very foundations of the modern monarchy. The year is 1936. King George V has passed away, and his charismatic, popular son ascends the throne as King Edward VIII. The public adores him. He's seen as a modernizer, a breath of fresh air for an ancient institution. But Edward has a secret named Wallis Simpson. Wallis was an American socialite, intelligent, stylish, and most problematically, twice divorced. In the eyes of the British establishment and the Church of England, of which the king is the head, she was entirely unsuitable to be queen. Edward, however, was deeply in love. He was determined to marry her, even if it meant defying the government, the church, and his own family. The British press, in a remarkable act of self-censorship under pressure from the government, agreed to a complete blackout on the story. While the American and European papers were filled with lurid headlines about the king's controversial affair, the British public was kept completely in the dark. It was a gentleman's agreement to protect the crown from scandal. Behind the scenes, a desperate battle was raging. Prime Minister Stanley Baldwin made it clear the government would resign if the king married Wallis. This would trigger a general election with the king's personal life as the central issue, a disaster for the monarchy's political neutrality. For months, the firm, as the royal family is sometimes called, tried to manage the situation. They explored alternatives, like a morganatic marriage, where Wallis would be his wife, but not his queen. But every avenue was a dead end. The cover-up couldn't last forever. When the story finally broke in Britain, the public was stunned. The man they saw as their devoted king was being forced to choose between his crown and the woman he loved. On December 10th, 1936, in a somber radio address that captivated the world, Edward VIII announced his decision to abdicate. He gave up his empire for love, and his shy, stammering younger brother was thrust onto the throne as King George VI, the father of the future Queen Elizabeth II. The crisis was over, but the attempt to hide it revealed just how far the establishment would go to control the narrative and protect the institution at all costs. Edward and Wallis lived out their lives in exile, a permanent reminder of a secret that almost broke the crown. Now let's journey further back in time to an even more hidden and heartbreaking story. This isn't a tale of abdication, but of a life deliberately erased. Have you ever heard of Prince John? If you haven't, you're not alone. He was the 5th son and youngest child of King George V and Queen Mary, the uncle of Queen Elizabeth II. For most of the 20th century, his existence was a footnote, a forgotten name in the royal lineage. His story is one of the monarchy's most tragic secrets. Born in 1905, Prince John was, by all early accounts, a bright and charming child. But around the age of 4, he began to show signs of epilepsy, a condition that was deeply misunderstood and stigmatized at the time. He also displayed behaviors that historians now believe may have been indicative of autism. In an era that prized physical perfection and rigid conformity, particularly within the royal family, John's conditions were seen as a source of shame, an imperfection that tarnished the royal image. So, the family made a cruel decision. As his seizures became more frequent and severe, Prince John was slowly removed from public life. He didn't appear in official family portraits. He wasn't present at major state occasions. By 1917, at the age of just 11, he was sent away to live in seclusion at Wood Farm, a remote house on the Sandringham estate. He was placed under the care of a devoted governess, Lala Bill, effectively hidden from the world. His siblings rarely saw him. While the family maintained he was being cared for, he was, in essence, erased from the family's public narrative. The official story was that he was being protected for his own good, spared the pressures of royal life. But the reality is that the monarchy was protecting itself. An heir with a visible disability did not fit the pristine image they needed to project to the empire. Then, in January 1919, at the tender age of 13, Prince John died following a severe seizure. The palace's announcement of his death was the first time many in the public even learned of his long illness. His short, isolated life was framed as a private family tragedy. But it was more than that. It was the deliberate concealment of a child, a prince sacrificed for the sake of royal public relations. His story remained largely unknown for decades, a secret locked away in royal archives until historians uncovered the truth of the lost prince. Finally, we arrive at a scandal that unfolded not in the distant past, but in the full glare of the modern media, a story that still provokes fierce debate and emotion today. This is the story of Diana, Princess of Wales, and her explosive interview that sent shockwaves through the monarchy. When Lady Diana Spencer married Prince Charles in 1981, it was billed as the wedding of the century. She was the fairy tale princess, but the fairy tale quickly soured. Trapped in a loveless marriage and struggling with the immense pressures of royal life, Diana felt isolated and silenced by the palace machine, which she referred to as the men in gray suits. She believed her truth was being suppressed in favor of protecting the heir to the throne, Prince Charles, and his long-standing relationship with Camilla Parker Bowles. For years, the public saw only the curated image, the glamorous clothes, the charity work, the perfect smiles. Behind the scenes, a war was being waged. Diana decided she would no longer be a silent victim. She took an unprecedented risk. In 1995, she secretly collaborated with the BBC's Panorama program, arranging a sit-down interview with journalist Martin Bashir without the Queen's knowledge. On November 20, 1995, over 23 million people in the UK tuned in. What they saw was breathtaking. Diana spoke with raw honesty about her bulimia, her loneliness, and the pressures she faced. And then she delivered the line that would detonate the monarchy's carefully managed image. When asked if Camilla Parker Bowles was a factor in the breakdown of her marriage, Diana replied with devastating quietness, "Well, there were 3 of us in this marriage, so it was a bit crowded." It was a direct hit, a public confirmation of what had been whispered about for years. She exposed the fairy tale as a facade. The palace was in chaos. They had lost control of the narrative completely. While they couldn't erase the interview, their immediate reaction was damage control. Days later, the Queen, realizing the situation was untenable, wrote to Charles and Diana, urging them to finalize their divorce. The attempt to cover up the cracks in the marriage had failed spectacularly. Diana had used the media, the very tool the palace often used to shape its image, to tell her own story. Though the methods used to secure the interview have since come under scrutiny, its impact is undeniable. Diana's voice broke through the walls of secrecy, forever changing the relationship between the monarchy, the media, and the public. She showed that even in the most powerful family in the world, one person's truth, once spoken, can never be fully erased. From an abdicated king to a lost prince to a rebel princess, these stories reveal a powerful truth. The British monarchy is not just an institution of ceremony and tradition. It is a family and a business that has, throughout history, fought to control its own story, sometimes at a tremendous human cost. The secrets they tried to bury remind us that behind the grandeur and the pomp, there are complex, flawed, and profoundly human dramas. Thank you so much for joining us on this journey into the hidden corners of royal history. What do you think is the biggest secret the monarchy has ever kept? Let me know in the comments below. If you found this fascinating, please give this video a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell for more deep dives into the stories you weren't supposed to hear. We'll see you in the next one.